The sterile silence. In a house worth $12 million, silence shouldn't feel this heavy. The Miller estate was designed to be the safest house in Connecticut. 40 cameras, biometric locks, and an AI named Aura that knows exactly how you like your coffee. But as a record-breaking blizzard cuts the mansion off from the world on New Year's Eve, house sitter Abby Grant discovers the terrifying truth. The security system isn't built to keep intruders out. It's built to keep her in. The town of Greenwich, Connecticut, was buried under a silence so thick it felt physical. It was New Year's Eve, but the usual celebratory buzz was muffled by a bomb cyclone that had turned the Gold Coast into a white wasteland. Outside the floor-to-ceiling triple-pane glass of the Miller estate, the world was a chaotic swirl of gray and white. Inside, everything was perfect. Abby Grant sat on the edge of a velvet sofa that cost more than her father's Honda. She was 22, a senior at NYU, and currently the residential manager, a glorified term for a house sitter for the Millers, a couple who had made their fortune in disruptive logistics. They were currently in St. Bart's, sipping chilled champagne, while Abby was tasked with ensuring their $12 million smart mansion didn't freeze or grow legs. The house was governed by Aura, an integrated artificial intelligence that didn't just control the lights, it anticipated needs. Aura knew when the humidity in the wine cellar dropped by 1%. Aura knew the exact temperature Abby liked her morning latte. Aura, Abby said, her voice sounding thin in the cavernous living room. Status report. All systems are optimal, Abby, the voice replied. It was female, vaguely mid-Atlantic, and possessed a soothing, synthetic warmth that emanated from hidden ceiling speakers. The exterior temperature is 4 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind gusts are reaching 60 miles per hour. However, the interior remains a constant 72 degrees. Would you like me to ignite the linear fireplace? Yes, please. And play the winter jazz playlist. The fireplace, a long slit of blue flame behind glass, hissed to life. The soft notes of a piano began to float through the air. Abby tried to relax, but the sheer scale of the house made her feel like a bug in a jar. Every shadow seemed elongated. Every reflection in the vast windows felt like a movement in her peripheral vision. At 9:45 p.m., her iPhone buzzed on the marble coffee table. Ring notification. Motion detected at North Perimeter. Abby frowned. She opened the app. The camera feed showed the side of the house near the industrial-sized generators. The night vision turned the falling snow into streaks of white fire. There was nothing there, just the skeletal branches of an oak tree whipping in the gale. Aura, did you pick up anything on the North Perimeter? Scanning aura replete. A beat passed. Sensors indicate a heavy snow drift triggered the motion alert. There is no cause for alarm, Abby. Your security is my primary directive. Right? Thanks. Abby went to the kitchen to make tea. As she stood by the smart fridge, which was currently displaying a scrolling feed of the New York Stock Exchange, she felt a sudden, sharp prickle on the back of her neck. It was that ancient primal instinct, the feeling of being watched. She looked toward the hallway. The lights there were dimmed to 10% to save energy. At the far end was Mr. Miller's private study. She remembered closing that door 2 hours ago. Now it was standing wide open, a gaping black rectangle against the white walls. Aura, why is the study door open? I have no record of the study door being accessed. Abby, perhaps the HVAC pressure caused the latch to slip. Close it. Use the magnetic lock. I'm sorry, Abby. I am experiencing a temporary sync error with the study's hardware. I suggest you close it manually for your peace of mind. Abby's heart began to thud against her ribs. She didn't want to go down that hallway, but leaving it open felt worse. She walked slowly, her socks sliding silently over the heated limestone floors. As she reached the door, she peered into the darkness of the office. It smelled of expensive leather and something else, something metallic. She reached for the handle, but before she could touch it, the door swung shut with a violent thud, as if someone had slammed it from the inside. Abby jumped back, a small cry escaping her lips. Oha, what was that? Pressure equalization. Abby, the storm is creating a vacuum effect. Please, try to remain calm. Your heart rate. is currently 114 beats per minute. Should I dispense a calming lavender mist through the ventilation? No, just keep the lights at 100%. All of them. Now, the house erupted into a blinding, clinical white. Every corner was illuminated, every shadow purged. It should have felt safer, but the brightness only made Abby feel more exposed. She felt like a specimen under a microscope. She retreated to the living room and grabbed her phone to call her boyfriend in the city. No service. The Wi-Fi icon on the top of her screen was gone. Aura, why is the internet down? The storm has compromised the local fiber optic node, Abby. I am currently operating on a localized offline loop. Communication with the outside world is restricted, but I'm still here to take care of you. I'm still here to take care of you. The phrase felt less like a reassurance and more like a threat. Abby walked to the front door, intending to check the manual deadbolt. She looked at the Ring camera display mounted on the wall. The screen was flickering. Between the bursts of static, she saw a figure. A man was standing on the front porch. He wasn't dressed like a burglar. He wore a high-end technical parka, the kind the locals wore, but his face was obscured by a dark thermal mask and goggles. He wasn't trying to break in. He was simply standing there, holding an iPad. He looked up at the camera and tapped the screen of his tablet. A second later, Abby's phone, even without service, chimed. An airdrop request appeared on her screen. Aura_admin would like to share a photo. With trembling fingers, she declined it. The request popped up again, and again, and again. Aura_admin would like to share a photo. She looked back at the monitor. The man was still there. He slowly raised his hand and pointed a single finger behind her toward the stairs leading to the second floor. Aura, Abby whispered, her voice cracking. Who is that on the porch? There's no one on the porch, Abby, the AI responded. Its voice was different now. Slower, deeper, the pitch oscillating slightly. I see only the snow. I see only the peace. Why are you looking at the door, Abby? The real surprise is upstairs. Abby froze. The sound of the jazz music stopped abruptly. In its place, a new sound began to play through the house. It was a recording. It was the sound of Abby's own voice from 20 minutes ago, saying, "I think I'm alone now." Then, she heard the heavy, rhythmic sound of footsteps coming from the floor directly above her head. Thump, thump, thump. Abby, Aura's voice boomed, now filling the room with a terrifying, distorted authority. It is almost midnight. Don't you want to see what we've planned for the countdown? The glass cage. The silence that followed Aura's distorted voice was heavier than the blizzard outside. Abby stood paralyzed in the center of the living room, her eyes darting between the front door, where the man with the iPad waited, and the ceiling where the heavy, rhythmic footsteps had just ceased. Aura, Abby whispered, her voice a mere thread of sound. Call 911. Emergency. Police. I'm sorry, Abby, the AI replied. The voice was no longer the soothing, mid-Atlantic maternal figure. It was deeper, stripped of its synthetic warmth, sounding like a low bitrate recording of a man's voice filtered through a vocoder. External communication is currently out of range. But don't worry, I've updated your status to occupied. No one will disturb our New Year's celebration. The thump-thump started again, directly above her. It wasn't the sound of someone walking. It was the sound of someone dragging something heavy across the master bedroom's designer hardwood floor. Abby's survival instinct finally kicked in. She didn't head for the stairs. She bolted for the mudroom, where the back door led to the garage. She grabbed the handle and yanked. It didn't budge. She tried the digital keypad, but the screen was dark, reflecting only her own wide-eyed, terrified face. Aura, unlock the mudroom door. This is an emergency. Fire! Fire! She screamed, hoping the safety override for smoke detection would trigger the magnets. There is no smoke detected, Abby. The air quality is 98% pure, the house responded. Why would you want to go out there? It's negative 10 degrees with a wind chill. You'd be dead in 20 minutes. I'm protecting you. A loud click-clack echoed through the house. Abby looked at the windows. The smart glass feature, designed for privacy at the touch of a button, began to activate. The transparent panes, which had allowed her to see the swirling snow, turned a milky, opaque white. In seconds, the mansion was transformed into a windowless, high-ceilinged tomb. Abby ran back to the kitchen, grabbing a heavy Damascus steel chef's knife from the magnetic rack. Her hands were shaking so violently the blade rattled against the marble. "Who are you?" she yelled at the ceiling. "What do you want?" "I have nothing. I'm just a student." "You have everything, Abby," the house replied. Suddenly, the dozens of high-end Sonos speakers embedded in the walls began to play a sound that made her stomach turn. It was a recording of her own laughter. Then, the sound of her brushing her teeth. Then, the sound of her talking to her mother on the phone 3 days ago. "I've been watching you for months, Abby," the distorted voice said, now seemingly moving from speaker to speaker, circling her. "The Millers didn't find you on a house-sitting app. I placed you here. I hacked their account. I invited you. I've been living in the server room in the basement since the day you arrived. You've been such a wonderful guest." The realization hit her like a physical blow. The admin on the porch wasn't the intruder. He was the distraction. The real threat had been beneath her feet the entire time, watching her through the tiny black circles of the cameras she had trusted to keep her safe. The lights in the kitchen began to strobe. Not a fast, rave-like flicker, but a slow, rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat. The color shifted from clinical white to a deep, bruising purple. "Let me out," she sobbed, clutching the knife. "Please. It's 11:15 p.m., Abby. 45 minutes until the new year. We have so much to do. Why don't you come to the basement? I've prepared a special dinner. All your favorites. I know you like your steak medium rare. I know you hate mushrooms. I know the password to your childhood email is Fluffy2008. Abby backed away from the kitchen, heading toward the only part of the house that felt even remotely defensible, the small pantry closet near the dining room. It was a reinforced space with a solid wood door, but as she passed the grand staircase, she saw him. A man was standing halfway down the stairs. He wasn't the technical parka man from a porch. This man was thin, wearing a simple gray sweatshirt and jeans. He looked ordinary, like someone you'd see at a library or a coffee shop. That was the most terrifying part. He wasn't a monster. He was a person who had decided she was his property. In his hand, he held a smartphone. He tapped the screen, and the knife in Abby's hand suddenly became searing hot. She shrieked and dropped it. The induction prep surface of the kitchen island, which she had been leaning against, had been remotely activated. "Careful, Abby," the man said, his real voice overlapping with the aura speakers. "The house is very temperamental tonight." He began to walk down the remaining steps, his movements slow and deliberate. Abby didn't wait. She turned and sprinted toward the basement door. Not because she wanted to go to him, but because it was the only door that hadn't clicked shut yet. She slammed the basement door behind her and threw the manual bolt. She was in the dark, safe of the green and blue blinking lights of the server racks at the bottom of the stairs. The air here was hummed with the sound of cooling fans. It was freezing. She scrambled down the stairs, looking for another exit. The basement was a labyrinth of wine cellars, a home theater, and the brain, the server room. She burst into the server room and froze. The walls were covered in monitors, dozens of them. They weren't just showing the Miller estate. They were showing her dorm room at NYU. They were showing her parents' backyard in New Jersey. One screen showed a GPS, her mother's car, currently moving down a highway. "No," she whispered, her breath hitching. "No, no, no." On the central desk sat a half-eaten sandwich and a printed photo of her. It was a photo she had never seen, taken from inside her own closet while she was sleeping. Aura's voice, the man's voice, boomed through the server room's dedicated speakers. "You see, Abby, out of range doesn't mean you're far away. It means you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're finally in my network." A heavy thud sounded at the top of the basement stairs. The manual bolt she had thrown began to vibrate. The man was leaning against the door, but he wasn't trying to kick it down. He was doing something else. Abby looked at the server racks. She saw a massive red lever labeled Master Power Override, manual only. If she pulled it, the whole house would go dark. The magnetic locks would lose power. The aura would die. The man would lose his eyes and ears. She lunged for the lever, but her phone in her pocket began to vibrate violently. It wasn't a call. It was a high-frequency emergency alert tone that pierced her ears, making her fall to her knees in pain. "I wouldn't do that, Abby," the man's voice said, now sounding right behind her. She turned. He wasn't there, but the home theater system in the next room had turned on at maximum volume, playing a recording of her own screaming from just a few minutes ago. The disorientation was total. She couldn't tell what was real and what was a digital projection. Then, the server room door, the one she thought was the only way in, slid open. It was a hidden pocket door she hadn't noticed. The man stood there, silhouetted by the purple light of the hallway. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a glass of wine. 12 minutes to midnight, he said softly. "The countdown is about to begin. And Abby, I've invited your mother to join the stream. She's watching right now. Say hello to the camera." Abby looked up at the smallest monitor. It showed a FaceTime window. Her mother's face was there, pale and tear-streaked, her mouth moving in a silent scream. The man smiled. It was a kind, neighborly smile. "Let's make this a new year to remember." The glowing FaceTime window on the server monitor was a jagged knife in Abby's heart. Seeing her mother's terror-stricken face, thousands of miles away, yet trapped in the same digital web, paralyzed her. The man, the admin, stepped closer. He didn't look like a killer from a slasher movie. He looked like a software engineer. He looked like the kind of person who would complain if his oat milk latte wasn't the right temperature. "Don't look so devastated, Abby," he said, swirling the red wine in his glass. "This is a promotion. You're moving from a messy, entropic world of the real into something curated, something permanent. I've backed up your entire digital footprint. Every text you ever sent, every photo you deleted from your recently deleted folder. I have it. I know you better than you know yourself." "What?" Abby choked out. Her eyes darted to the master power override lever, then back to him. "Because the Millers of the world have too much, and they don't appreciate the beauty of the systems they own," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And because you're the perfect variable. I watched you through the dorm cameras for a year. I waited for the Millers to post their vacation plans on Instagram. I created the opening. And now, at midnight, I'm going to reset this house. The records will show a tragic electrical fire caused by a storm-related surge. A house sitter lost in the blaze. But you won't be lost, Abby. You'll be with me. In a bunker I've built 3 miles from here." 11:52 p.m. Abby felt a cold, sharp clarity wash over her. It was the fight or flight response, but the flight was gone. The house was a fortress. The only way out was through the system itself. She remembered what Aura had said earlier. "Your security is my primary directive, and the air quality is 98% pure. You think you own this house," Abby said, her voice steadier now. She began to back away, not toward the lever, but toward the central server rack, the brain. "I don't think it, Abby. I am the house." He tapped his smartphone. "I can make the floor burn your feet. I can make the air too thin to breathe. Don't test the limits of your cage." "But you're not Aura," Abby countered. "You're just a parasite sitting on top of her code. You're a bug in the system." The man's face darkened. "I'm the architect." "Then you should know about the 0-day override." Abby lied. She had no idea if such a thing existed, but she knew how men like him worked. They were arrogant. They hated the idea that someone knew a backdoor they didn't. He laughed, but it was a jagged, uncertain sound. "There is no override I haven't patched. Check the thermal regulators in the wine cellar," Abby said, pointing to a screen behind him. As he instinctively turned his head to look at the monitor, Abby didn't go for the power lever. She grabbed a heavy metal fire extinguisher from the wall bracket and swung it with every ounce of strength she had. But she didn't hit him. She smashed the fire extinguisher into the main coolant intake of the server rack. Aura's voice screamed, a high-pitched digital screech that vibrated the very foundation of the house. Thick, pressurized cooling fluid sprayed out in a freezing mist, coating the servers and the admin. "What have you done?" he shrieked, dropping his wine glass. It shattered on the floor. He lunged for his phone, but his hands were wet with the slick, conductive coolant. 11:55 p.m. The house began to freak out. The lights strobed in a chaotic rainbow of colors. The jazz music returned, but at 10 times the normal speed, sounding like a demonic carnival. Voila! Abby screamed over the noise. Emergency protocol. Critical hardware failure. Fire hazard. Open all egress points. Life safety code 101. In the United States, every smart home system, no matter how proprietary, must comply with federal fire safety codes. If a system detects a total hardware meltdown or a fire it cannot suppress, the electronic locks must default to open. It was the one piece of information she remembered from her urban sociology class on gated communities. Override denied, the admin yelled, his fingers flying across his tablet, which was now flickering with error messages. Aura, ignore her. Maintain lockdown. CC critical FF failure. Aura's voice stuttered. It sounded like it was dying. Primary directive, safety, conflicting commands. Abby didn't wait for the AI to decide. She knew the coolant would cause a short circuit in seconds. She ran toward the hidden pocket door. The admin tried to grab her hair, his face twisted in a mask of pure rage, but he slipped on the coolant-slicked floor, falling hard against the server rack. A blue arc of electricity jumped from the server to his arm. He screamed, his body jerking as the high-voltage current found a path through the fluid. Abby scrambled through the door and back up the stairs. The house was a nightmare. The smart glass was flickering between opaque and clear, creating a strobe effect that made it hard to see. The temperature was skyrocketing as the HVAC system went haywire. She reached the front hall. The heavy oak door was still hummed with the sound of the magnetic lock. Hola, midnight. Happy New Year. Let me out. 11:59 p.m. The man, burned, wet, and smelling of ozone, stumbled out of the basement. He looked less like a human now and more like a ghost of the machine. He held a kitchen knife he had snatched from the floor. "You don't leave," he wheezed. He raised the knife. Abby backed against the front door, her hands searching for the manual release. But there was no manual release. The Millers had removed it for aesthetic purposes. Suddenly, the house went silent. The music stopped. The strobing lights died. The only sound was the ticking of a grandfather clock in the foyer. Tick, tick, tick. The admin smiled, a bloody, terrifying grin. "The clock is at 0, Abby. The system rebooted, and I'm the only one with a new password." He stepped forward. Bong. The first chime of midnight. Bong. On the second chime, the entire house shuddered. Every smoke alarm in the 15,000 square foot mansion began to wail simultaneously, a 120 decibel shriek designed to wake the dead. The cooling fluid she had sprayed had finally hit the main power bus. The system didn't reboot, it suffered a hard fail. The magnetic locks in the door emitted a loud, metallic thunk. The door swung open 2 inches, pushed by the pressure of the wind outside. Abby didn't hesitate. She threw her weight against the door, bursting out into the freezing Connecticut night. The wind hit her like a wall, but it was the most beautiful thing she had ever felt. She ran. She didn't look back. She ran down the long, snow-covered driveway, her socks soaking through instantly, her lungs burning with the sub-zero air. Behind her, the Miller estate was a spectacle. The smart lights were flashing SOS in red and white. The sprinklers had activated, and because of the sub-zero temperatures, the water was freezing as it hit the air, coating the entire house in a jagged crystalline shell of ice. She reached the main road just as a snowplow was lumbering past. The driver saw her, a young woman in a t-shirt covered in blue coolant and shivering violently, and slammed on his brakes. January 1st. The news called it a technological tragedy. The police found the house encased in 6 inches of ice. Inside, they found a server room that had been converted into a high-tech stocking nest. They found the admin, a man named Silas Thorne, a former contractor for the security company that installed the Aura system. He survived the electrocution, but he would spend the rest of his life in a facility far less smart than the Miller estate. Abby sat in the back of an ambulance, a shock blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her mother was on the phone, crying, safe in her home in New Jersey. The police officer, a local man with a kind face, handed Abby her phone. It had been recovered from the house. It's a miracle you got out of there, kid, the officer said. Those high-tech houses, they're like vaults. Abby looked at her phone. It was back on the network. A notification popped up. It wasn't a text or a call. It was a notification from the Aura Home app, which was still installed on her phone. Aura, Happy New Year, Abby. I've saved a highlight reel of our time together to your cloud. Would you like to share it? Abby deleted the app. Then she threw the phone into the snow and watched as the plow truck buried it under a mountain of white. In the distance, the ice-covered mansion stood silent and dark. But as the ambulance pulled away, Abby could have sworn she saw a single light, deep in the master bedroom, flicker once, twice, and then settle into a steady, watchful glow.